Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Together. Hope you're all having a lovely morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where in the world you are. We are in the evening when we're streaming anyway, and I am here talking to Christian from Superior Adventures Guild. Hello, mate.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine. A little knackered from the day of work, but otherwise, you know.
Oh, yes.
We do what we must. We do what we must.
You have a real job, yes.
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 But I mean, I wouldn't sell short what you do either. I mean,
no.
If you have obligations and you have people you answer to or that answer to you, then it's a job.
It's a job. Yeah. Someone tell my dad. No, that would be good. Cool. Yes,
are we going down that? Because if we're going down that alley.
Just not. I mean, anyway, I'm Chris, and I'll be talking to Christian about all things TTRPG, D&D, you name it, we're going to do it. Yeah. Now, just importantly to mention at the top of this show, in case you don't know who Christian is, you are the dungeon master, games master, and creator over at Superior Adventures Guild, which are part of the Rolling Together stream team, which is how we know each other, isn't that right? Yes.
Yes, it is. It is,
good.
In fact.
For those who don't know what SAG is, tell us a bit about SAG.
The Superior Adventures Guild is a guild, a small group of friends from the Lake Superior area. So it's not because we think we're so much superior than everybody else, because it's the group that started the guild originally. We're from around Lake Superior in Minnesota. And I don't know, 2 bazillion other people, they decided during the pandemic since they were going to play online anyways, to start streaming. And then after the whole pandemic thing was over, they were like, hey, we like this. So they kept on going with that. And so it's been going on, I want to say probably close to 3 years now. I don't know the exact incept date of the guild. And in August last year, I joined. I was a fan for a while, watching their streams and whatnot, and I joined, and we just sort of started really kind of trying to grow the guild and doing more shows and so on and so forth. And Dave Grandmaster, who's the DM Dave, who's the guy who created the guild and who runs the guild, was doing it all on his own for a super long time, just running all the games and doing all the stuff. And he was looking for some people to help out and do a bit more. And so here we are doing what we do. We had last year at our peak, we had I think 5 shows going at some point. Which was too much, really, for the amount of people that we were working on it. But,
still, impressive.
We were young and really...
We were never young. This is lies.
Yeah,
this is things people tell us, and we look at nod and sagely and say, yeah.
We pretend.
Sure.
But we learned a lot, and, we scaled back a little bit this year just to preserve sanity. And, we're here, and the guild continues to do what it's always done, which is to focus on, being inclusive as much as possible and helping out other people. Dave's motto is heroes at the table and heroes in real life. So he's big into the fundraising and all that. So, we're doing our thing and playing games with people and having fun.
And where can they check you out? What's the Twitch channel? The
Twitch channel is the old twitch.tv/Guild Superior.
Lovely. Check them out. They are spectacular and fantastic. And what shows can we watch at the moment? What's currently streaming?
We are sort of in a lull right now because my 2 shows finished last week, and I have a 2-week break. But currently, we have the ongoing Heroes of Greyhawk, which is DM Dave's campaign that they've been playing since the beginning. I play in that. We played last night on Tuesdays. I play in that now. After that, we have Miko, the OK's GM, runs our Monday Night Mayhem game. He's currently doing a short arc, 4-game arc based in his homebrew world. And then that's a show where we rotate GMs and systems and groups every 2, 3, or 4 sessions, depending on how things go. And Dave is starting on Sunday. I was running a Vason, which ended last Sunday, and now for the next 5 or so weeks, Dave is running a Mothership game, which is a sci-fi horror game, which is going to be pretty cool. I think
cool.
The game itself sounds like it's pretty good. And the people who played the tryout the other day had fun. So that's what we got going on right now. And tons of other stuff going on too here and there, but those are the games right now that we have on deck, so to speak.
check all of those out, and check out Superior Adventurers Guild or Guild Superior on Twitch. And let's get to know Christian a bit better with a couple of questions. Before we do, a couple of AOB. We're sponsored. Hero Forge, Ultra Pro, Phoenix Dice, Alchemy RPG. They're all excellent. Check them out. Links in chat. And we're supported by D&D Beyond, Neverwinter, and Elderwood Academy, and Idle Champions as well. So check all of those out. And of course, none of this is possible without the D20 Club. You're all marvelous and fantastic. I learned how to do this the other week. Yes! Look at it. Oh, fucking got it. Yes. And yes,
You're so hip. You're so hip.
So they tell me. I am a parent, and hipness died a long time ago.
It's a long forgotten dream.
Yeah, when your kids tell you how uncool you are, that's the line, I think.
But I kind of think that's what you're kind of, once you achieve that, it's sort of like nothing else matters. Like anything can happen, you can handle anything. It's kind of like that.
It is true that kids redefine your priorities hugely in the best possible way. Like yeah, I love my kids. They're all lovely. Anyway, absolutely. Yes, none of this is possible without the D20 Club, who support all of this, and they are marvelous and fantastic. And thank you so much for all of your support. And they're on Patreon. You can join them on Patreon. There'll be a link in chat. And you can also watch our shows here on Twitch, here on YouTube, or here on this podcast. Because I don't know where they're listening or engaging, so it could be in any of these places. So now they're here. This is good. Right.
Are you on TikTok? That's the important question.
See, okay, let's start talking about this, because I'm number one, I'm too old for TikTok. Number two, I have on really good authority that TikTok's a fantastic place to do your thing, and that's really lovely, but there's very little traffic off. So unless you are literally doing everything on TikTok, unless it's like your baby and all the shows are there and all the little things are there, you're not going to get people going to like different things you do online as much.
Like a little walled off community.
It feels a bit like that as well, from like my little, like, what is this thing, looking at it. It feels like, you know how platforms are like, stay on our platform. On TikTok, it's like, this platform is everything. Do not leave this platform, which it bothers me a little, not going to lie. But yeah.
I mean, I think it'll get out. People probably outgrow it at some point really fast. I don't know. I know that as a teacher, the students are super on it. But the thing I'm realizing more and more now is that, it used to be I'd make the joke like, haha, Facebook, your parents are on Facebook. But now I'll say like, what are you guys on TikTok? And, half of them are like, hey, they've moved on, so I don't know. It's like,
okay. My previous career, when I wasn't doing theatre and TV and all that sort of thing, was PR and marketing. And one of the things that we realized with the place I was working is that there are some social media platforms that really stick around. And Facebook's one of them, and Twitter's the other one. And in the meantime, there are a bunch of smaller ones that will have these massive, massive peaks where they'll come out of nowhere, be huge, but then they will eventually peter out a bit. And it's difficult because spending all that time on that platform when it doesn't have a transient audience that moves off that platform onto other platforms, it's really tough to evaluate what the value of anything like that is. But that's a very boring way of saying TikTok has fun videos on it, and that can be fun. It's just because I'm old and don't care. That doesn't mean that anyone else shouldn't. It's their prerogative,
and there's a huge discussion about it, and this is certainly not the forum for it, but what, and I say the kids, and I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form in derogatory. Like I said, I'm a teacher, and I certainly have a lot of respect for my students. But the young people who are on TikTok really rely on it for a lot of things and we were talking about that with some friends this weekend, like, where did we learn those things? Like something as simple as how to cook some food, or how to, how to paint something or whatever. And they're getting that there. Where did we get it? We got it from our parents maybe, or something like that, or older mentors. But now they're getting it from there, which means that they're not getting it somewhere else. So there's that disconnect there that's creating that demand for that, that platform and that product to be there, I guess.
It's also creating their social contract. It's creating their sense of who they are, what issues matter to them, in a much grander way than Facebook or Twitter ever did. I mean, I think that they both tried to move into that, and then Facebook became conspiracy theories, Twitter became, echo chamber. But TikTok, more so than than those two in particular, feels like this space where, have you seen this thing? It's important that you see this thing. Kind of conversations happen. So I don't know. There was a time when I want to say in my 20s, but it feels a long time ago, when Snapchat was that, very briefly, where everyone was on it and everything got shared on Snapchat, and then it became something very different and transformed entirely. So I don't know. I don't know quite what to make of it at the moment. I hear it's trendy.
The video thing is a big part of it, because I'm of that generation where if I click on a news thing and they show me a video, I'm like, give me the text, I want to read it, and
it's true.
Like I don't, that really annoys me. Like I'll stop going to places because I want to read it. But my students are really all about getting that video and getting it told to them in a video format so that they don't have to read and so I think that's a big part of it. Like they're just developing this, absorbing this state of absorbing that comes from watching the video and sort of having all these things come at them at the same time in a very short format.
It is the art of short form as well, which is really, really interesting, because it's like, I mean, a lot of it is very similar to what I would describe as sketch comedy when I was a kid, where it was about how can you quickly churn out these very quick, like clever things that fit together. Like there's so much camera trickery that goes on it, and people playing around with the idea of what they can do with basic CGI, but also stuff like visual tricks of where someone sits in the lens and that sort of thing. I do find it's clearly a huge creative outlet, which is very cool. I admire that.
Which is the thing that I think is great about it. I remember when the sea chanties had 2 minutes in the sun there last year.
Yeah.
And watching them, I was like, this is incredible. Like, then somebody else's video adds on and they're playing in time. And I was like, I have no clue how they did this, and it's really incredible. And they're sitting there on their phone.
Yeah, it has a function. I can't remember what it's called. This proves how old we are. I don't even know what the things are the youth are doing. But there's a thing where I think it's called something like you take someone else's video and then you just record yourself on top of it doing something else.
And it does it.
And it keeps the audio or something. So there was a huge amount of what in my youth we used to call remix culture, and this idea that songs could be remixed and stuff like that, which was very trendy when I was 13. So you can see a lot of the same strands, can't you?
It's the same. It's the same animal, just different stripes on it. Really, is what it is at the end of the day. And
I'm going to roll a dice. We can talk about D&D. That's what I'm going to do now, because we've shot the breeze about TikTok.
But now you got me thinking, could you do like a stream thing where someone would stream something and then you would tack on your own video to responding to that so that the GMs...
I'm going to go with feasibly. I can see it, but then what would the unified product be? But then again, we're making shows for our generation. Like we know that. Right. Like we push a little towards younger, but in the end, 3-hour videos, who watches that? Anyway, I have rolled a 5.
Oh no.
Yes.
What's 5?
Just a D20 roll. 5 is, how do you feel about cosplay? Interesting.
In TTRPGs or in my private life?
Let's say, interesting. Oh, I see what you mean. No, that aspect of your life I don't wish to know about. But,
well, damn.
Well, for example, like, have you dressed up for conventions? Have you dressed up for stream?
No, in fact, I am. When I was a kid, I hated getting dressed up for Halloween. All the other kids would do it, and I just, for whatever reason, there's something in me that, I mean, I'm not saying I've never done it. I have. I did it last year for a friend's birthday party, and we all had to dress up as our favorite movie character, for example. So I did it for something like that, and occasionally, as a young adult for Halloween. But I've never been into it. I've never been interested by the idea of disguising myself. And even when I was a kid, like at school on Halloween, everyone would do it. And sure, when I was a really, really young kid and we went to get candy, I would do it. But personally, it never appealed to me. However, I absolutely 100% understand how and why it does appeal to a lot of people. And I'm often amazed by it. I'll see, we'll raid someone, for example, that's doing a stream where they're in cosplay, or I'll see pictures on Instagram or whatever of people doing cosplay, and it's amazing. And again, the sheer creativity and the joy that it brings these people, and just that anything that brings fulfillment to someone, I'm like 100% for, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But something like that, the amount of work that goes into it, you have to love it. And I can only say like kudos, because it's absolutely fantastic to watch. I myself don't go in for it, but
I suppose it leads into a conversation about LARPing when we talk about what we do as well, doesn't it? This idea of what we do is so on screens and so like removed from this actuality of running around in the forest. Whereas I know there are people who were LARPing and taking TTRPGs into costuming and storytelling in a grand space takes the tabletop out of it entirely. I must say, it's never appealed to me. I am not only an anxiety-ridden homebody, but like yourself, I'm not a costume person. For me, clothing is quite important because of gender conversations that I have to have. So adding an extra layer on top of disguise is something that I find difficult personally, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's different. But that's also why LARPing's never appealed to this idea of going out of my comfort zone, even if RPGing is comfort zone, leaving this comfort zone, the desk, the camera.
Going camping is just a terrible idea. So running around in the woods, not for me. I did play one of the games that had the most impact on my life, actually, and when I was thinking about, what kind of questions could come at me and sort of answer with thinking about the important moments in role-playing in my life, a lot of that were in the 3 to 4 years where we played Vampire LARP, when that thing was huge.
Oh, right.
And some people would really get into the costuming aspect of it. The most I ever did was throw on a trench coat. But in that period, I also hung out a lot in like goth clubs, and I was a goth DJ, but I was never goth. And I was always like, the regular guy in the bunch. But those days that LARPing was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed leaving the table behind, like I said, and going out, and we would LARP in bars and restaurants or hotels or wherever. And back then there was this organization that was called the Shared Universe, and there was 30 odd cities across Canada and the United States, and I played in maybe 15 or so of them with people from most of them. And we would go and have these huge conventions. There'd be like 300, 400 people playing Vampire, back when like the first years when it came out, and it was huge. And that aspect of it, of embodying the character beyond just sort of playing him at a table, was really, really a lot of fun. And it got you, it really took over your life at a certain point. Like you really started kind of leaving at the table. There's always that reminder that you're at the table and this is a game, or if there's a screen, on that. But in the LARPing, that it becomes so intense, right? And it can really really get into it. So the people who are into it, like I have one of my home game players is super into LARPing. She's there every summer. Every summer we have to rearrange our gaming schedule because she goes LARPing for weekends at a time. And she's older. She's almost 60 years old, and but she goes, and I'm like, she would not give it up for the world. And I'm like, you're going to go get eaten by mosquitoes in the woods. like really, and she's into it. And I get that, like that sense of that level of intensity that comes from really portraying that character, like is very engaging.
It's funny because my background is theatre and TV and is this sense of performing, but the idea of taking this and what I love about this into an outdoor arena, or into even like a VTM style club arena or a bar arena, I can't think of anything I'm already so socially awkward outside of this forum. And not out of a vague sense of like, oh, I can't talk to people. It's not that. It's, I just find the whole experience of like conventions, it's such a huge part of our industry, and I struggle so much to even think about going to them because, I mean, being transgender is never fantastic in the outside world because the world is what it is. But on top of that is this, I find crowds difficult. I find people, people coming up to me who are aware of who I am and being excited to see me, I feel like there's an onus there on me to offer or provide something that I simply don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that side of this I've never really got on with. And I think LARPing and this idea of cosplay falls into that same category for me of this like divestment, this removal. Yeah. It's a really weird one because I feel like I should be interested and it should be something that I like, but I just, it shivers down my spine, literal shivers.
But it might be like a difference between like, a method actor and someone who's not a method actor, someone who can just be in character and do the thing and then, go and do something else, where other people have to really live it to be able to bring it to the table. And it's kind of like that, right? Where you're comfortable being in that character and you have no problems immersing yourself in that character within that moment. But also I'm thinking it sounds a lot like teachers who need a podium or a lectern or something in front of them. One of my teachers, John Miller, when I was at university, he was one of the most respected literature minds at the college where I was at, the university where I was at. But he could not go and talk in front of people unless he had his little podium that he could hang on to, and he would say it. Yeah, he was like, "This is my lifeline,"
Yeah.
And so
I get that.
Maybe there's some of that too. There is that kind of protection here of being in your environment and all that. And I'm a teacher, but I'm not a social person in any way, shape, or form, like at all. We were watching The Last of Us the other day, and one of the characters goes, "I was happy when everybody else died." And I'm like,
yeah, I really liked that line. Yeah.
Too. I was like, it's a bit extreme, but I'm getting the
you can vibe with something without going, yes, that's correct. And
totally.
Hey, let us not kid ourselves. The thought of, what if there was an apocalypse tomorrow and no one else was around? There's a part of me that goes, oh, what a sigh of relief. And that's so weird in the construct of, I stream stuff online as a job. And yet there's a guard.
Yeah, because it's controlled, because you're controlling it, right? You get to control the frame, you get to control the lighting, you get to control what you're wearing, you get to control what people see of you. You get to shut it off if you want at any time. Like, there's a lot of control there. And I think maybe that's, when you step out in front of people or go out into a crowd, like you said, people come up to you and they have expectations of you because of who you are and what you do. Yeah. And you start feeling, am I going to be able to fulfill those expectations? And then that I can totally get that can be super anxiety inducing, and you're like,
it's so weird though. Like, I have no problem public speaking. I've done public speaking in front of thousands of people over the years, and that's no big deal. But in this context, for some reason, it is, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is in particular.
Might also be because within the context of playing a character or playing a game, you have to put yourself. You have to. What's the word I'm looking for? I need an English teacher here. You have to expose yourself, right? You have to be. You have to be willing to go in that moment and maybe look a little silly or a little but to bring that character out as an actor, that's what you have to do. And so if you're giving a speech or something, you're still more in control. But I don't know. And then it's just the fact that sometimes some things work for us and some things don't, I guess. Which I have no problem speaking in front of crowds either, but in a party, I'm like terrible.
Yeah, same, very much same. That it's the small talk is anathema to me. I find the whole idea of it weird.
Oh yeah, small talk. I can't. I'm like, let's just hang out in silence. I'm happy. I'm okay.
I love a comfortable silence. A good comfortable silence is a thing. Having the ability to have it with a friend is so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of personas, because you DM more than you play.
Yeah.
And I DM more than I play. Would you say you have a DM or a GM persona, like a character that you inhabit when you are performing the role of Games Master?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the same thing when I teach. Even little things like how I speak or how I hold myself or things of that nature. But for sure, like, it's not I wouldn't say that it's a concrete persona or something that I've put thought into. It's very instinctual.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of me in there. Like, I'm fairly humorous, but there is definitely a performance aspect to it. And I recognize that. And to the point where my girlfriend laughs because I have specific clothes that I wear depending on if I'm playing in Dave's game on Tuesday nights. I have a specific hoodie usually that I wear and whatnot. And then if I'm GMing Vason, I had so I had that aspect, which I'm not into cosplay, but I guess I am. But I had like, this is my,
definitely.
Yeah. But
it's
just that one little thing. It's kind of like putting on the Superman cape, where you put it on, now you're Superman, right? Nobody, Clark Kent puts on his glasses and no one knows he's Superman. He takes them off and they know he's Superman, right? So it's that same thing where this for me signifies, right now I'm in my GMs. In my home game, I don't. Like in my home game, I'm in my sweats and my flannel shirt and my hair's like this, and I don't really care. But definitely, given the performance aspect of this, so yeah, and I would think that I don't maybe have as much of a persona when I GM my home game, but certainly on stream, for sure.
How does the persona, like, how is it different from you? What are the, where do you go? That's Christian the GM, and where do you go? That's Christian the human being. Like, where's that line?
I don't know. One of the things that I was about to say when you were asking that question, I was starting to formulate my response, was I think I'm a lot more aware of other people when I GM. But that's not entirely true, because I'm super aware of other people in real life also. Okay. But I don't know exactly where I think a lot of it has to do with, and when I GM, I let go a lot more of my ideas of things, of how things should be, or how things should happen, or what the rules mean. In my life, I have very strong opinions about a lot of things, and I, try to stand by them, and I try to be stand up about those things. But once I'm in the GM's role, same thing as when I'm in a teacher mode. Like I said, they're very similar. I'm a lot less rigid about my view of things, I think. And it's certainly something that I learned last year when I started GMing a lot online. When I was doing the first of my homebrew Shadesong stuff, I was really focused on telling my story. And I realized when I took stock at the end in December, when I had a few weeks off and I took stock, I was like all the failings of that show were because of that, I was like, this is what I want to see. And so I made a lot of changes, and the one we just finished, I thought it was so much better because I let go of that, but I had to do it to sort of learn. But that's part of it. It's that idea that I definitely come to the table letting go a lot more of what I think. And even if I think this rule makes sense and this rule is good and I agree with this rule, in the moment, I'm super happy to change the rule or, let the players do something. And I think that's probably the biggest thing where I've become perhaps more of a facilitator or something than.
So it's you lose a bit of a bit of that drive that's like, no, here's what we're doing and here's how we're doing it, and fall much more into the role of facilitating, of everyone else's ideas becoming a much bigger part of what you're doing.
I try. I certainly don't want to say that I'm really good at it, doing that, because certainly my ego, you have to have a healthy ego to do it, the job in the first place, to stand up and say, hey, I'll run some stories, to get on the stream and say, I'll run some stories for you guys and for whoever else is watching. So you have to have, your ego has got to be, in a decent place.
It's really interesting because I play up my ego. Like, I purposely mock it. Like, I will play up that there is a thing that I want the party to do, and I expect them to go and do it. And if they don't do it, I will have some mock outrage of, do you want to go and do the story? Do you want to go and do the plot? I'll get more performative outrage, definitely. This idea of like performative, well, this shouldn't have happened, or damn you, dice, like all of that slightly over the topness that I really enjoy watching in DMing, because I enjoy watching players screw a DM over is so strong. You know what I mean? I want to see players do something cool that the DM wasn't expecting, and then watch the DM roll with it in a way that makes everyone feel like their ideas are valid. And I do like the slightly over the top, like, no, drive the narrative, come on, like having that sense of drive at the top, because it means that the players all feel that sense of, we got one over.
We got one on top. We got one over.
We got one in. And I really enjoy the thought that there are players there going, we got one in, knowing that it's performative, and that there are audience there going, they got one over on the DM. That sense of like it being a show where the GM is sort of antagonist, but also facilitator. Because that's a really interesting line to boundary to handle, because you do need to challenge them. That's the point. If everything's a cakewalk, they are not as invested. But in the same vein, if it's too difficult, they will disassociate because it's too hard to focus. So,
and that's definitely a big thing. If it's too difficult, they'll sort of give up, and they're not having fun anymore. And you can see it either as a GM or as a player when that's going on. There's that tipping point, right, where it's fun, it's challenging, but now it's not fun anymore, because it's just, it's become sadistic almost in what's happening to us, right? And that's something I try to be very aware of, because I also like challenging the characters. I always said I want the players to win by the skin of their teeth, because I guess maybe as a player, that's what I like. I like to know that I was challenged and it wasn't just a cakewalk. But getting that, and that's where experience comes in, right? The more experience you have, the more you know your players, of knowing where that point is. I was watching Fracture yesterday.
Oh, thank you.
It's an excellent game with so many amazing players in it.
You are very
no, I've been paid to say this. No, and
I wish.
I wish. But there was that moment when things were going wrong. Everything was going so wrong. And Rebecca's character was invisible, and then somebody else was thinking of fleeing and abandoning the group.
Monday's show. The Tuesday show, sneaking in. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, exactly. And the joy in the players' laughs once they succeeded, once like you could tell that they were nervous. You could tell that they were like, oh, can I swear on this thing?
Yeah, of course.
All right. You could tell, like, holy fuck. I've been trying to not swear because I'm a terrible mom.
But here we go. You picked up on this week's Fracture, and I will let you in on a couple of little secrets, because I'm sure you'll appreciate this. I told them all that going to Sevit's Stronghold, this place in the center, was going to be about level 5. It was never going to be level 5. That was never the intention. It was to make them feel scared of it, which they were. When they went inside and they started going, we should sneak around and not do full frontal, let's just attack everything. That is because whenever we paused, I was there going, guys, be careful I can't protect you if you just decide to fight everybody.
Oh, you went reverse psychology on them. Almost like you were like,
I wanted them to be afraid, and I wanted them not to, I had an out if they all got kidnapped, and I had an out for all sorts of different versions of how the argument would go. But what I wanted them as players, as their characters, to do was go, we don't think we're good enough to deal with this. We don't think we're high enough level. We're kids. We don't know what we're doing. And the next couple of sessions, as they deal with all the situation, is a chance for all of them to feel like, gosh, we actually achieved something here. Mm-hmm. Didn't think we would. Gosh, that came out of nowhere. How did we achieve that? And building that sense of they are teenagers. Because part of GMing that campaign for me is these characters are teenagers. Mm-hmm. I need to present them with a world as a teenager would see it. Lots of categorical right and wrong things, and then muddy the water all the time to give them this sense of we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really know if we've made the good choice or the right choice. I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. I purposefully put all of this stuff.
I won't tell anyone.
I know it's on the internet. I purposely put in all this stuff about how Sevit's probably a terrible person, because here's all the things people say about them, and here's all the things that happen, and then just seed very gently. But maybe it's all bullshit. Maybe this is all fine. Maybe actually you've just seen this from a very bad perspective, because as teenagers, we're filled with that sense of self-righteous aggrandizement, and this person is bad and we are good, and maybe this person isn't entirely bad. And I've been trying to see that throughout as often as I possibly can. This idea that not only is the world scary, but they are teenagers in this world, and therefore they don't understand it. And because it's a whole new homebrew world, and I haven't given all the information out about it yet, I'm hoping to hold a lot of that back for as long as I can. This idea that we're going to make a bold choice here. Wow, that's really not okay. Shit, we're going to stop doing that now and do this instead. Like playing with this idea of what makes... Yeah, because a lot of the campaigns we run are in Forgotten Realms or in Faerun, and everyone knows everything about Faerun, which is fine. But it means that there is this surety, this adult line that we know where we sit and we know what's right and we know what's wrong, and that's good. With this, I went, I don't have to do that. They're kids. I can keep giving them red herrings. I can keep playing with this idea of grey morality while also having other characters turn to them and say, you should think this, and watching them as teenagers go, we should think this. Should we think shit?
But in order to do that, you need to have players that buy into that and are willing to live that, because no one, it's very hard to play the uncool person or the unsure person, or everyone wants to play the hero, everyone wants to play, and so you need players who are willing to say, I'm willing to feel that way, I'm willing to feel overwhelmed, I'm willing to feel uncertain, I'm willing to feel like like this is way beyond my capacity. So it's not, and both you and I have been blessed with being able to run games on streams that have absolutely wonderful players in it.
Absolutely.
And that's not everyone gets that chance. I think one of the things that allows us to do things like that to be, experimental to a certain degree as a GM, to say, I teach writing, and one of the things I tell my students all the time is, a writer is a manipulator. As a writer, you're trying to manipulate your audience into feeling a specific thing or specific emotion. And so you have a toolbox for that. And as a GM, I feel that there's a lot of that also, where you're trying to manipulate, which is a bad word, but in the kindest way possible, we can say this word, manipulate your players into experiencing certain emotions, and which is why it's dangerous to have a bad person as a GM, because there is that power that's there, especially when your players are buying in. They have to be able to feel safe, and but there is a lot of that, and I like to do a lot of things like that, where sort of experimental or trying different things, are kind of going, okay, I'm not just writing the story and putting bad guys in their way and puzzles, and then seeing what happens with the roll of the dice. I am trying to create something. I'm trying to get them to a place, right, where they can experience, I guess, which is terrible of me to say it that way, but to have this experience of being in this position with these characters and really feel it. And to me, as a game master, the best compliment I can get is when someone goes, like, I really bought into that, like I was really like in that moment. And that's what I guess I tried to do as much as possible. I tried to create those moments for the players, but you need that trust, you need that confidence, you need that level of skill in the players, and that ability to get into that. But you need also that ability as a GM to say, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? I need to think about it. I need to plan it. I need to take things into account. I need to want to do it. There's a lot of self-reflection involved. And that to me is the challenge as a GM. Because writing a good plot, coming up with a cool NPC, and anyone can do that. You can do that with a couple dice and a chart, right?
Yeah.
But saying, all right, what's this thing going to be about? How am I going to get the players there? Am I going to get them to feel safe enough to try this? To me, that's the challenge that I love in being a GM.
It's that thing. I don't know if you get this. I certainly get this, where I'll put something in a campaign, just put something in. Doesn't matter what it is, and in the back of my mind, I'm going to make you care.
Yeah.
I don't care why. I don't care if it's fear or like that this is a beloved NPC who you don't want anything bad to happen to, or I'm going to make this person flesh and blood to you. I'm going to make this NPC someone that you are actively thinking about and feeling about, that they become real to you.
Yeah.
That is what it is one of the things I am good at, and is what I'm going to do, damn it, and it's going to be great. Because I also firmly believe, not just that, I appreciate there is some skill in what players do and in what we do, but I think a huge amount of all of this energy and how this works is fostered. Like, I think there are a huge number of people, when given the opportunity to invest in a story and engage in a story as a player and do something with their character that involves them role-playing out of a situation, that that so many people have the capacity to dive into that deeply if you give them the wherewithal to do so. You give them the openings and give them the lay the juicy steak in front of them and go, this is yours.
Yeah.
Take it.
I think that people don't get that often offered to them or given to them.
It's true.
A lot of people just want to, and there's nothing wrong with it. You want to just, go through some dungeons and kill some creatures and roll some dice and knock yourself out. And then there's room for that. I appreciate that too. But I think that a lot of players don't get an opportunity often to be told it's okay. Here's a safe place, and here's the thing, and go for it, and you can go for it. And, and not everyone wants to, and not everybody can, but when you get that moment, like when you really connect with a player or a group of players, and that can happen regularly, that's a high. That's literally a high. That's what it's all about,
And then riding that line with humor.
Yeah.
That's the toughest bit. I find that hardest. My mind will often leap to not a joke necessarily, but someone will say something and I will I try really hard not to snigger every time, but I do. It's in my head, if nowhere else. And sometimes that deflates a moment, but sometimes the moment needed to be deflated, and it's good that the moment was deflated. Sometimes big, portentous, I just roleplayed really heavily, needs a dick joke. Because then everyone just calms down out of that moment into something that we can all engage with and enjoy. And I'm especially aware that we have an interesting third parallel that affects us more than other DMs, in that we are primarily live DMs. We are primarily streamed DMs. Mm-hmm. Which means that there's not only a relationship between us and the players, it's us, the players, and the audience who are watching this. I always find it particularly interesting when I think, okay, I'll look at some stats. What do people actually want to watch? What is the show that we've done that is the big success? What is the thing we can replicate? And it's so varied, and it is such an alchemy of different factors that it's very hard to go, this is the thing. But by and large, campaigns that are too portentous and not funny enough, engagement dies down. Yeah. Campaigns that are just comedy and no depth, engagement dies down. You need that balance between we're all players and friends having fun at a table, telling silly jokes and doing dumb little things together, but also here's some super intense roleplay for 30 seconds and then it's back again. It's got to have that seesaw back and forth.
The peaks and valleys, right? That's like traditional storytelling. You need to have that. If you're always up there, you can't maintain.
Exactly.
You need to be able to come down, take a breath, remind yourself that these are your friends, that this is a game, that you're having fun. But to me, as I'm many things. I'm a GM, I'm a player, I'm a streamer, but I'm also a watcher of streams. I didn't watch a lot of streams before I got into streaming, but now I try, even if it's like a half hour, an hour, I'm listening to it, I'm doing something else. I try to watch as much as I can because I want to see what people are doing and be inspired by that. But as a watcher of streams, when everyone has that really honest, deep-seated guffaw of something really funny, it's not just like someone made 10 dick jokes in a row and then everyone's but there was this moment and that happens. And there was one like that in Fracture, which is what made me think of that. There was one in Fracture when I was watching and we had the same thing in a lot of ways. I tried to I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was I remember exactly what it was. I was listening to it. I'm sorry.
It's fine, don't worry.
But I remember the explosion. Yeah. I remember the explosion of laughing. And I watched later that night, I watched another one, Level 1 Geek. They're doing this Vason series, which is very good also. And 2 months ago, whenever they started this thing, they were making the characters and they had money to spend. And I was watching as they were doing that. And then Em went, what should I get with my money? And I said, get a dog and a grenade in chat. And she's like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I got to name the dog and that was cool at that audience. But last night, 2 months later, they're in this situation.
Payoff.
And and Em's like, do you know what I have because of Bleakseason? And I'm like, what? And she's like, I have a grenade. And that loud guffaw everybody gave and just that belly laugh was oh, and it didn't end up working at all. But that moment of like, they were like, oh, the dragon, we don't know what to do, we don't have the way to destroy, and everyone was so tense. And then the way M delivered that line and the whole silliness of it just made people laugh so hard, and you could really tell that it was like, oh, okay, now, and then we're back, we're good to go back and do that. So yeah, humor, I mean, I'm being actually fairly serious here, but humor is usually my my number one weapon of choice.
I think it's so good to take something that where everyone's feeling very vulnerable and very open, and to just give them a chance to go, gives them a very quick chance to go, we can all have a nice joke and a laugh about this. The guffaw is genuine, but it also means it gives me a very easy way to switch that off if I need to.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly valuable.
It is, and again, it's part of that aspect of, as the GM, knowing when to do something and when not to do something, and when to push here and when to push that, and to say, okay, this moment we need to play it out, or and that's just with experience, I guess, that you.
Well, you said as a watcher, I am of the relatively firm belief that the more streams you watch, the more varied streams you watch, the more different people you watch, the better GM you are. Because you see how everyone else does it. You can pick up 1,000 different things from watching a stream, which is great and so useful. And you pick up such random things. I can't remember who I was watching. It was on our channel. It was one of our GMs. I can't remember who it was. But I remember watching it and going, I should take that. And what it was simply asking for fewer dice rolls. You have passive skills in D&D. It makes life so much easier. You're not constantly going, throw in a random element. You don't need a random element. Sometimes a random element is fantastic and draws focus, but sometimes characters want to go, well, my character's good at X, so I'm just going to be good at X. And you go, yeah, you're good at X, that's fine.
But here's the question with that. I struggle with that, because I am of the less dice roll is better frame of mind. Yes. But I often in the moment think the players spent their points putting him in this skill. And when you roll that skill and you succeed, it's exciting. So I'm always kind of, should I, and like in Vaesen, I run a lot of Vaesen. I love Vaesen. And in Vaesen, they clearly say in the book, don't make the players roll. If the player says, I'm going to go search the armoire and there's something in the armoire, they find it. You can make them roll to find, like more information about that thing or deep, kind of thing.
Okay. Let's take this as a good example, though. Let's take this as a good example. It's a great example. I would say DMing 101, if they need to find the thing in the armoire for the plot to continue, don't make it a roll, because they might not, and then the whole thing falls apart. What is the point? But that's a classic DM thing. Like, they'll say, I'm going to look in the armoire, roll me a search or investigation or whatever system you're running, check. I failed it. And use DM go, shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn it, I need them to find the thing, otherwise and we've all done that. Yeah. Like, I did that in all my first games. I remember very clearly making that error, and it's an error, but it's one you can it's one you can fix. Now comes the next bit. Roll to search the thing. Okay, the higher they roll, the more I will give them. Can I limit the information? Can the book be burned or not burned? Like, there are ways you can make the roll mean something, which I would say is step 2. Finding a way for this information is going to come to you because I need it to come to you, and that's fine. But what detailed information do I give you? And do I hold more stuff back because it makes the plot more interesting if it's more mysterious? I've seen versions of that which have worked fantastically well. And that tends to be, if I need something to happen, but a dice roll feels like it's going to give the player more or less, that's where I would add it in. What I've now moved towards more so is, okay, I'm going to search the armoire. Your character has an investigation score of plus whatever. In D&D, that's called a passive. You have a passive skill, which is 10, which is an average dice roll plus the passive skill. Just give them the passive skill. Because their character is good at it, because they put stats in it and they made it the thing they wanted to do. What use is dice rolls? Pressure. Chance of failure. Chance of failure where failure means something. Chance of failure where the failure adds stress and tension. Or, frankly, we've all done this. If enough people roll dice, one of them will fail.
Yeah.
The classic being, how do you make sure the party fails a stealth check? Make the whole party roll a stealth check and don't take the average.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. One of the things, again, in Vaesen, if you make a roll, that roll is good for the entire scene. So if you make a stealth check, that check is good until that scene's over. And you know, when you're playing a game and like every turn you have to make that stealth check, eventually you're going to fail it. So we might as well move ahead to the fight, you know, like.
Of course. And we all do it. It's cheap. It's cheap and tricky, and it works for everyone. What I tend to do, and people who watch the channel a lot will notice this, is if I want the stealth to succeed, but they've got characters in there who are always going to fail stealth checks, I will take an average. If I want the stealth to fail because I think it's funny or interesting or moves the plot forward, I don't take an average. But that's a super basic thing you as a DM can do. Just a real simple way, and also hint to your players, I'm taking the average. Just roll it. But then if you're taking the average anyway, why not just use their passives? Why does it matter? Why does it make a humongous difference to add a dice roll in? Like, for me, a dice roll should be there to enhance and add tension, not to move the plot forwards. Yeah,
that's the distinction that's hard to make, especially as a new GM. But even as an experienced GM, I do it all the time. I'll get caught in that situation where I'm like, do a roll, then they fail, and I'm like, that was stupid. Why did I ask them for a roll? Like, I really need them to. So even now with my whatever, almost 30 years of experience doing it, I'm like,
I still fuck up with that sort of thing all the time because it's very hard to move out of that ingrained feeling of a dice roll because of thing. And the place where I find it comes into a particularly interesting area is combat, because you can't do that in combat. In combat, everything is a dice roll because it's a game and you're playing a game, and therefore things have to succeed or fail, and that's part of the game structure. How can you bring that into combat? What I find I end up doing instead is building the world around them with a lot of options of things that could happen, go right, go wrong, whatever, so that whatever the dice rolls are, the narrative of the combat can still progress. So what I find myself doing more and more these days is I'll put combat in a moving arena, or I'll put combat in a situation where there are ledges to fall off or things they can climb up on. Chances are they won't use that in their dice rolls. It'll be I roll an X to hit, you miss, whatever. But if they succeed and combat is going quickly, finding ways for them to succeed faster so the combat ends, so we move on to the next scene, so don't get caught in that terrible, keep rolling dice until you take off its last potential hit point.
Yeah, exactly.
Tedium that we don't need. Yeah,
especially on stream, like combats on stream, I'm like, the least amount possible and over with as quickly as possible. And I've been known to just like slash an NPC hit points just by a ton. Because I'm like, hey, the players have been doing well. It's been fun, it's exciting. It's about to become tedious. How do you kill it?
Exactly.
How do you
cheap and cheerful death?
How do you?
I agree. Cheap and cheerful death. I think that's a very good way of doing it. And slashing hit points is a very easy way of handling that situation. What I tend to do is build in a scenario where that character can get removed from combat.
Yeah.
Because they're going to win. It is done. Whatever. In the same vein, if they're finding combat difficult, not just these creatures are more powerful than you and you are struggling with this, but how can I add more peril that isn't my hit points are going down?
Yeah, that's so. You're talking about all this.
You might fall off the bridge. You might lose your weapon without fucking with the game's rules too heavily. Finding a way to add the stress and tension that isn't, I'm losing hit points. It's, I'm knocked over. I'm grappled. These are fantastic tools. I've I've had my weapon kicked away from me. What was one I did recently? We might fall off this thing that we're all tied to, and a big area of effect spell just happened, and that could burn the ropes that are holding us up, but it could not, like that sort of thing. Yeah.
And I'm reminded you're saying that, and these are all things that I totally believe in also, and that I try to do. And I'm reminded of that line in Study in Scarlet by Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes story, where Sherlock says genius is the ability to take pains. And I really think that a good GM, being a good GM, is the ability to take pains, to take the time to think about these things, to want to put them in, to come up with different and clever things. And because it's easy to just slap a monster with a stat block and say go. Sorry,
I've got a visitor.
Speaking of NPCs,
he woke up.
What's up? He definitely has the look of the I just woke up.
Yeah. No face licking. I'm on camera.
But the ability to do that, to self-reflect, to say, how can I make this better? How can I make this more interesting without just it being more hit points and more, I hit you, and it may not be genius, but it's definitely like, that's what it requires, the ability to take pains to go through that and to say, I'm going to do that extra work. I'm going to think that extra, I'm going to do those things to make it better and more interesting, basically.
I think D&D in particular, over recent years, with 5th edition being so successful, it has also, through small rules tweaks, brought in series of smaller things that have helped with this a lot. Like mythic abilities, mythic legendary resistances. They're building in rules to help GMs with this kind of thinking. Now, I find the idea of, I cast a spell, the monster fails its check, therefore the spell takes effect. No, it doesn't. I just draw a line under that, to be a bit heavy-handed from a DM perspective. However, I do think framing it from the perspective of, do you want this combat to end now? Because what you've done will do that unless we do some kind of clever thing to bring it down. And mythic abilities in particular, you've knocked all its hit points down. Now it's in its Final Fantasy boss fights. Now it's in its second, more terrifying form.
Yeah.
I love that conceptually, because Final Fantasy is amazing conceptually, but also it means that the combat changes. The rules of the game change. The rules of what you're doing change. And all of that just makes combat more interesting if it rolls.
And no one likes anticlimactic combat.
No.
So again, it's a question of walking that line of knowing when to go into it and then pull it back a little bit. And again, it's the type of thing that makes the GM, really a maester. Like one of the things that you watch an orchestra conductor.
Yes.
And, it's arcane what they're doing. You're like, well, what does that even mean? And how are people doing, Yeah. But once you start understanding what they're doing and how they're doing it, it becomes, majestic. It becomes magical, because once you start understanding, now he's giving that slight little thing there just to push that. Oh, he's just telling the woodwinds, to just go up a little bit. Oh, it makes all that difference. And that's, I think, being a gym is what it is. It's like a game of inches and ounces, just a little bit more here, a little bit more. No, I'm going to pull this one back a little bit. And, you can do that on a big scale of, hammer or remove the brick or whatever. And that's, I think, like add the hit points or remove hit points.
Yeah.
But then you can also do it on that level of, okay, well, here's that little pinch of this. And that's just that moving thing or that. And that's what I find interesting as a GM, to try to achieve those things, to better myself at doing those things, to think about those things. And that's where the art form, I think, comes in to what we do, as pompous as that sounds.
Well, there is, as you said, to be a DM requires a certain amount of ego, but there's also, like, it's facilitatory. Like,
because it's in service of the people.
I don't do it for me. And I know that sounds self-deprecating, but if I wanted to tell a story that I had written, I could just write it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be very good, because, surprise, surprise, the stuff that makes these stories really great and makes them work are the players bringing their characters and role-playing. Well, I don't know if you have this. Sometimes I just sit there while GMing, and when you don't do a lot, when they're role-playing, and you just stay out of it.
Sit back and just be amazed. Just become a spectator.
Yeah.
Being entertained. I love that. That's my favorite thing, when you can just kind of kick back, and even if they'll go on for 20 minutes or whatever, and you're just like, hey, go, and
do you also feel at those points? I feel at those points I go, oh, this has nothing to do with me, and that's brilliant.
I don't think that, and maybe it's because my ego's a bit bigger, but I don't think that it has nothing to do with me, but I do think that my job's done.
Interesting.
Like, I've done what was needed to get them here. And now...
I agree with that statement. I've done what was needed to get them here, and I'm glad that they are here and they're making something amazing. But also...
now it's in their hands.
If I wasn't here right now, that would be totally fine.
Yeah.
And that is actually more valuable, because it means this isn't a world I've created and I am there churning under the surface, making sure that you're all engaged and excited and enjoying it.
People are living it.
I don't need to do that right now. I don't need to be there adding more gas or adding more juice. It's happening now.
That's where it becomes a living world, right? That's where it's being lived rather than being played or experienced or viewed. It becomes something that people are just doing. You're
watching your project exist outside of yourself. There are very few art forms where that exists.
I think it's kind of like if you're a musician and years later you hear your song come on the radio or something.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, that thing's out there and people are listening to it and liking it. And I've done my part. Like I've moved away, I've walked off the stage.
Is that a cover of my song? Cool.
Exactly.
Okay.
Totally. So, and I love that too, because I do think that, it's like a play. The actors can show up in the middle of a park and do the play. But what you add as a GM with the set and the lighting and, and then part of the script and, the directions and stuff like that is what really frames it. And then the players come in and they breathe life into it,
But it's so fascinating because from a theatre perspective, I can't think of a more ego-driven profession than a theatre director or a theatre writer. The amount of times I've been working on a project where the writer's been in the room and gone, it's not really how I conceived of it. Like, who gives a shit, buddy? Like, it's not important now. And why is it that this is the profession where people go, it is no longer mine and I couldn't be happier, when that doesn't happen in all of those others, because you've taken what was mine and you've changed it. You've tweaked it in a way that I did not like and did not approve of. It is wrong. Yeah.
Again, that's that skill of a GM of being able to say that. And some directors are like that. After it's the premiere, they're like, okay, or musicians will be like that too, like hearing a cover, like you were just saying, going, well, that's not how I did it, but this is great. Like I enjoyed this, and I think now it comes down to what kind of person you are, and I think that within the context of a role-playing game, it's all, as much as theater is collaborative to a certain degree, there's still, at the end of the day, or filmmaking, the director usually, or whoever's holding the string purse perhaps, but the director's calling the shots, and that's kind of how it functions. But with, the collaborative aspect of TTRPG, and I know that I keep hearing things here and there, on the interwebs and on the Twitters and all that, where people are like, it's not collaborative and it's not the same. And I'm like, if it's not collaborative, then, you remember those books, the books where you are the hero that, I don't know if you play those, I play those as a kid, like, if that's what you want to play, then yeah, sure, it's not collaborative, because it doesn't matter what you think. If you're going left and it's a pit, you're dead. But if you're inviting people over to play with you and you're not going to agree that they have their say in the matter to a certain degree, more or less, depending on how your group likes to function, your dynamic, you're lying to yourself, I think, because by the very act of them being there and they're not an audience. That's what I say with, again, with my students, at the time you go watch a movie, you get 0 decisions to make. The colors of things, the sound of things, the shape of the room, the face of, that's all pre-decided. It just washes over you. When you read a book, it's different. You have to supply a lot of that. So in essence, the book is always kind of a discussion between you and the author.
It's that argument. It's very easy to passively watch. It's very hard to passively read.
Yeah. So, and I think that's maybe that difference. TTRPGs is very difficult to do passively. And we see it. One of the great aspects of streaming is the audience interaction, which we get often. One of the things that we love at SAG, our audience isn't big, but it's the same people coming back and they get into it. And the stuff that they say and the cheering bits and their, that participation aspect of it is very, very core to the experience. Oh, another one.
Yeah.
Oh no. That's a sausage dog. Oh.
He's half Daxi, half Jet Russell. He is our first dog. He is my absolute baby, but he is also an absolute grub. Oh. Aren't you, Val?
I love those.
Yeah.
My girlfriend and I, when we see some in the streets, we'll take pictures and send them to her. Look what I saw today.
Well, this is bad. Yes. That thought, it is a nice one to end on, but I think I want to end on it in a conversant way, if you're okay with it. Because I think I don't like making big sweeping statements about the internet and the people on it, but I do think that there is a tendency, especially on social media, to want to stand counter, to want to be different. Shush you. And I think to a certain extent, people who watch streams will sometimes go, it's not collaborative. That person is in charge and they're doing whatever they think is best. And the other people are just there and along for the ride. I think an element of that is feeling like it's impossible to have that kind of collaborative storytelling. And I think an element of that, aside from it being impossible, is also people thinking that you can say it's collaborative, but from my experience, that doesn't really exist. It's actually one person in charge saying it's collaborative and no one's going, yes, boss, it's collaborative, which isn't really part of my world, but I am aware it's part of a lot of people's worlds. A lot of jobs that is, you know, the bank you work for, and it's making a very grandiose statement about banks, but I think it's only fair. We are a collaborative unit of people who all work on this thing. Yes, boss, we're a collaborative unit of people who work on this thing. If you're used to that kind of dialectic, then of course you watch a GM play and go, no, it's all big hand on top telling them what to do. And the old joke that, of course, it must be scripted. Of course, it must be scripted. None of this stuff could happen organically. When it does all the time, and the more time you spend doing it, the more you go, this stuff does happen organically. And the more I let it happen organically, the better stories are told. Like, people, the reactions to the Critical Role TV show, I think, are fascinating, because people who know the show, who know the streamed game, get excited about watching the scenes that they love. People who don't know it go, this is so random. This is so weird. Why did they write this? And you go, they didn't. They were playing D&D and weird shit happened and they rolled with it because that's the point of the game. Like, why do they chase after the dragon by going up its ass? Well, it's a really weird thing to do. It feels tonally really wrong for the entire rest of the show. And you go, because it's D&D and weird shit like that happens all the fucking time.
That should be on a t-shirt. We were playing D&D and some weird shit happened.
Well, the thing I'm most worried about with the film is that they're clearly using dialogue and tone to try and replicate that idea. That it's random, that sometimes weird stuff happens as part of plot and you have to go with it. And I'm not sure I'm not sure if I buy in, because that's written by someone. And unless you are going, like, one of the things about Game of Thrones that gets thrown back as well is that a lot of Game of Thrones was George R.R. Martin doing some role-playing with friends and coming up with, like, the reason the narrative arcs in these weird ways and some really fucked up stuff happens, more often than not, is just a role-play experience of, wouldn't this be the most fucked up thing that could happen here? Yeah. And I think a lot of that really awesome storytelling comes from a place of organic collaboration, and that a lot of people outside of the world of spaces where organic collaboration is so commonplace look at it and go, it can't be. There's no way. I don't believe it. But when you're in it, you can see people faking it and going, that's not it.
Yeah. And can I give you a concrete example of that?
Please do. Yeah.
In the my homebrew Shadesong game that we just finished a 5-part arc on Guild Superior. At some point, I like to give magical items a story and a weird name and all that. And one of the characters, Dave, actually, DMD, was playing a character who was this old man who had spent all of his life, he wanted to play this character, had spent all of his life kind of cloistered and researching, and he just wanted to go out and live an adventure before it was too late. Sure. And so he's and when we were doing magical items, like, okay, well, I'll give him something that connects to that. And I, right there, just not connected to anything at all in the game, I created this item that was these pieces of this crown from the ancient Thane, and that he had made a deal with the gods to let the giants not be hunted by humans anymore, but he had to give up his crown to do that. And they had broken up his crown and hidden the parts on different worlds, and then he was disappeared, and there were a lot of prophecies about him coming back. And you have one of these pieces of this crown, and you've been researching this. Totally throwaway. And we had a guest coming on in the 3rd episode who was in another world that they met. They went to kind of Valhalla kind of thing. And he had a second piece because I wanted him to achieve something of his life's quest. So this other NPC, this other player that was coming in to guest for one episode, who stayed for 3, because it just worked out that way, had another piece. And the moment he had those two pieces, they got into a combat, and we're using the Dragon Bane system, and it's super deadly.
Okay.
And one of the players died. One of the player characters died. And out of nowhere at all, Dave had the second piece that he'd gotten off the other player. And he said, we're in the afterlife. This thing was agreeable. I'm going to just use this and try to channel my energy into this and try to do something. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like, to me, this is... And so he does this thing, and I'm like, okay, just do a magical roll so I can see like to what amplification the effect happens, sort of thing. So he makes his roll, and he got a real high roll, and I'm like, well, fuck it. You know what?
Yeah.
And so I worked with the other player afterwards, and I said, your character is dead, but now the Thane has come back, that original Thane, and he's in your character's body. And from that moment on, and that was nothing, from that moment on, the story became about this, and this was one of my best players, Scoozy, who was just phenomenal. He really took this, and he was playing a character that was really had super low intelligence, and he was just kind of this like big goof. And he started playing this transition as that old personality was fading away, and this new one. And we worked it out a little bit. We're like, okay, well, he feels that what the Jotuns have become is kind of disgraceful, and this is not what he gave up his crown for, and all. And anyways, and by the end of it, the story became about one, his return, and like what he saw of the Jotuns, and then that Insomnia Knight, who also runs his own stream, but was a guest player for one game and ended up staying 3 because things just kind of chained out. His character's redemption arc is he played that character in another game last year, and his character had died without his sword in his hand, so he was in Inferno, and he never made it into Valhalla, and now he had this chance to be redeemed, and so anyways, all of that, which was the back half of my storyline or the game, I had no inkling of, was not planned by me, was entirely the players did something, and I was like, this is more interesting than what I'd planned. This is great. It's going to make them feel like they had this impact on this world, like they changed something. And we went with it. And if that's not collaborative, I have no clue what is, because until that moment, until Dave took that gem and said, I'd try to do something, you know, I was like,
you live for those. When a player goes, I want to do something. Do you know what? No.
And I was like, to me, that Thane character coming back, there was never at all something I thought of. But when the player did that, it created that moment.
There's where a dice roll is really cool, because there's where a dice roll became, he rolled high, and I felt like I had to honor that.
Yeah.
That's a cool outcome. He rolled low, it had to go super badly wrong. That's an outcome. Like, next week's Fracture, no spoilers. Look out for some nat ones that make some serious impact on story points. And they are nat ones where you go, geez, okay. And we had to, like, you can see all of us at the table going, okay, recalibrate this, because, oh my God. And it cycles down. And it's moments like that where you go, okay, the value of dice rolls is unquestionable, but finding the right place to make them add or scare that moment completely. Yeah.
So not make it a roadblock thing, but make it a changing the direction of the narrative and creating something out of it, right? It has to be a creation moment, not a destruction moment, basically.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we got through one question.
Yes. Did we fail? Does that mean?
No. This is so normal for me. This is so
Are we fired now?
I always do this. I always just get into these lovely rambling conversations with really intelligent, interesting, fascinating people, much like yourself, Christian. And thank you.
And tonight you did it with me because there was none of those people around.
No, you are a star.
I super appreciate
it. This is lovely stuff. Thank you.
Absolutely, I super appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for the show, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being here. We stream our talk show on Fridays, 6 till 7 p.m. It's either Talk Together or Talking as a Free Action. Yes, and we stream D&D games on Mondays and Tuesdays. We talked about some of them, but check those out at twitch.tv/rolltogetherrpg, or you can find them on YouTube at youtube.com/rolltogetherrpg, or there's podcast versions. Just search your podcasting app for Roll Together RPG, and you should be able to find it. Yes, enough about Roll Together. We're great, but let's hear about Guild Superior, Superior Adventurers Guild. Where can people find the shows? Plug. Christian.
All right, so Twitch, obviously, /Guild Superior. We are also on YouTube on Guild Superior. If I may be allowed, I would like to plug one thing, which is DM Dave this weekend, part of the Greyhawk Mega Stream fundraiser for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. There are a group of great streamers, including Phoenix Iwaki, who's also in our stream team, and a group of other people doing games all weekends to raise money for St. Jude's Children. And Dave is running one at 8:30 Eastern on Guild Superior's channel. So if you can, tune in for that. And otherwise, come on in, check us out. We are always happy to have new people. We're same thing, Guild Superior on Twitter. I'm at Bleakseason on Twitter. Find me there. Come and hang out. Come see our shows. We love having fun with people, and super appreciate the invite to come here. It was a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Same. Well, friends, that's all from us. Massive thank you again to the T20 Club on Patreon. You are marvelous. Join them if you can. And otherwise, see you soon, friends. Bye-bye.
Ciao.